Welcome back to Give Me Some Truth. Today we're going to go through our 2024 year-end financial checklist. And we kind of wanted to do it a little bit David Letterman style. And Nate said, does everybody know who David Letterman is? And I would say, like, David Letterman is not the guy with the huge beard that kind of got into retirement. Like, there was a pre to that, and David Letterman was, you know, kind of the Johnny Carson of our time, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, he never had the Tonight Show, which he always longed for. They bypassed him for that, so he had his own show. But yeah, exactly. Yep, pretty much.
He was very clean shaven, very very normal looking. Now he looks like Santa Claus, and he's
living his best life.
He is living his best life.
Yeah, for him.
He's still hilarious too.
Yeah.
You know. And for those who don't know him, you should probably check him out, and that's a good reference point.
And his top tens.
And his top tens. So we have 6 today. And just like David Letterman would do, we're going to go into reverse order as well. So Andrew is going to lead us off on all of these. Number 6 is...
Yeah, so number 6 is going to be account contributions, specifically referring to like retirement accounts and other employee benefits. So making sure that at the end of the year, you're reviewing these and making sure that you're, making all the contributions that you're allowed to make. And, some of the specifics we can go over as well if you want to dive into them. But we're talking about 401ks if you're, in like a privately held company, 403bs if you're working for a state institution or a school or something like that, IRAs, Roth and the traditional IRAs, but as well as HSAs and FSAs that tie into like your health plan or something like that. 529s as well as another area that we're going to discuss. And then last but not least, if you're in a certain type of, employment compensation where there might be stock options or restricted stock options that we've run into recently and is much more topical right now. I think it's becoming more and more popular.
And a lot of these don't have the issues with timing because a lot of these can be made after the end of the year because they need to be made by tax day. But 401ks and 403bs specifically really need to be fixed soon if you're going to fix them and try to get those catch-up contributions in because it has to be payroll deducted and has to be done before the end of the year.
Yeah, I think people don't quite understand that you can change those contributions up to the amount of your paycheck for whatever pay period that is. You can have your entire paycheck go into those accounts if you're trying to catch up quickly. So that is something to keep in mind. If you have a little too much cash on the sidelines, but you haven't maxed out your 401k, some people will take their entire paycheck, put it in their 401k, get that maxed out, and then just kind of, quote, live off their cash for that period of time.
Yeah. And so just to be clear, the contribution limits this year for 2024 are $23,500 for anybody, for everybody. And then if you're over 50, there's an additional $7,500 that you can contribute to it. So it's that I'm a late saver and I'm going to start, really, stashing stuff away. You get that little extra catch up there.
And then IRAs, what are the limits for those?
So IRAs are $7,000 for everybody, and then an additional $1,000 for 50-plus-year-olds, so an extra $1,000.
And it's the same for Roth IRAs.
And Roth is the same. Yep.
Although you have a maximum of either one of those accounts, and you have to check your eligibility, and there's some nuance to that. So that's all income related. So just be careful there, and just check with your financial advisor or tax preparer to make sure that you're under the limits for income for that year or projected to be. And you can always do your taxes and then make those contributions after as well.
Yep. So we just did a HSA specific podcast, so this is timely as well. But HSAs are health savings accounts. You're allowed to put $4,100 if you're an individual, or $8,300 for a family, and then again, there's another $1,000 catch up if you're 50 years or older for each of those situations.
And as we alluded to in that podcast, you can invest those contributions as well.
That's
so
right.
Be careful about how you do that. And the next one on the list is FSAs at, I see, $3,200. Nuance to that also is that FSAs often have to be spent as well before a certain period of time. So you want to check your plan document on that. But a lot of that money has to be removed from the account. So that's not like an HSA where it's a kind of in perpetuity account that you can let ride for a number of years if you don't take the money out. You've got to take the bulk of the FSA money out and you try to do that at the end of the year usually.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little side note on that. If you have an FSA, a lot of people try to just dump those at the end of the year by going to their eye doctor, getting glasses, getting contacts, going to the dentist. So if that's your plan, get those appointments scheduled now, because in December, those people are slammed because people are trying to get rid of that money.
It's kind of their tax day.
Yeah, right, exactly. So do those in October. Don't do those in December.
Yeah.
And I think one of the main ones here, 529 plans, right?
Yeah. So I think 529s can be confusing because, if it's $18,000 per individual. So, my wife and I have a child and we want to save for them. We can each, as an individual, save $18,000 on their behalf. So it's actually between the two of us, we can do $36,000. If we've got more kids than one, then, it's $36,000 per child. So I don't, that's one nuance that I'm not sure everybody understands.
Yeah.
And then, obviously there's the, what can you spend 529 money on? What can you actually, cut checks for? And that's changed a little bit because I believe even high school tuition and maybe even we're moving into younger years can be as well.
That's correct. And, one thing to note too is that there's a tax break,
Yes.
state tax break for many plans. So you have to just match up. We got people all over the country listening. So, just match up your state plan and with the state tax break. Some offer any plan and some have specific plans that are eligible for that. So let's roll into number 5. Andrew, what do we have number 5 for the year-end financial checklist?
Number 5 would be tax and estate planning. So this is going to be somewhat general, but specifically talking about tax is Roth conversions. If you are looking at your estimate for what you might earn in that particular year, does it make sense to start converting a chunk of your traditional IRA savings into Roth conversions, and what the tax consequences might look like for that year?
Yeah, very complex. I know, Nate, you and I have been doing a bunch of conversations around this, and I don't know. I think that this is one of the biggest opportunities, but also the one that might be most misunderstood as well.
Yeah, because it requires a little pain, right? I mean, you got to pay tax on that conversion. A lot of people don't want to do that because you got to give up that money up front. But in a lot of ways, it's really important. But it's a complex situation in very individual situation for most people. It's hard to go off of rules of thumb on that one. Don't just think this is good for me because my brother did it or my neighbor did it or whatever. You really got to look at the nuance of your specific situation first off. And on that same point, kind of similar to what we were saying on the FSA point, sit down with your accountant now. Sit down with your CPA now, because this is a time of year where they're not quite as busy, and they're going to get more busy as we get closer to December and January. So not a bad idea to do a strategy session with your accountant early in the fourth quarter, just to kind of get things teed up and ready to go. It'll make tax time much more comfortable because you'll know any kind of outstanding things that you need to kind of wrap up or take care of before trying to do that in March, which is just not the best time. And that's the time that everybody tries to sit down with their accountant.
And it's really helpful for us to have that sort of, what they're going to do is kind of cobble together all your income sources and kind of tell us, okay, well, this is what we have for your income, which is very helpful for us when we're doing the planning, because then we can look at different spots and we want to check in. We want to say, okay, well, with the conversion, this is what the income looks like. We look against Medicare brackets and things like that. It could be a podcast all in itself, but just keep in mind there's a lot of nuance to it, and you can step on some tax landmines along the way. So you just want to be a little careful about how we're all putting this all together. So Andrew, also gift and charitable donations as well towards the end of the year. A few different ways to skin that cat.
Yeah, I mean, there's, if you're charitably inclined or you want to gift, it is a potential way to offset some of the tax. So if you are doing Roth conversions, there might be opportunities to gift, other monies to help offset some of that tax burden. But I also think that, and it's kind of jumping ahead of the next line, like the qualified charitable distribution donation is a way to, again, gift to whoever you're charitably inclined to, without having to realize like an income from a required minimum distribution. So I think there's a bunch of different things, but again, it takes planning. This isn't just something you can even walk up to your advisor in one day and be like, hey, this is what I want to do, and then it's going to be done. So you need to plan this out. We're in September. Now is the time to start having those conversations.
Yeah, and this required amount is
different
got
ways
to be.
to skin a cat.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I saw Courtney's reaction when you said that, and I had to. I mean, that's like a 1900. Like that's like your grandfather's grandparents.
I know.
Like,
what's a throwback? We were
it's
Letterman.
very much
talking
of a
about him.
throwback.
Yeah. Well, it
Okay.
is because you could do qualified charitable distributions. So that would be over the age of 70.5. You can start doing them. It also suffices for your requirement of distribution. Also, donor advised funds that you could use as well if you have some highly appreciated stock, or you can just donate cash as well. So there's a bunch of different ways to skin the cat.
Okay, or to give charitably. Either way. I mean, it's all right. Are we to number 4? I realized he had drum roll too. That's what we didn't do.
Yeah.
That's the part
That's true.
Yeah, that's kind of on Courtney.
Yeah,
for that
that's
one.
it.
We should have had that one squared away.
She could have maybe pressed the button that does
Right.
the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Should we
maybe
start
we'll
over?
punch it up next time.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to start over.
That's something you can put in after, right?
After Effect. All right.
Number 3.
4.
4.
Number 4. Oh, excuse me. Number 4.
ahead.
654. This one's really it's pretty straightforward, but review of your insurance. So if you own insurance, that could be life insurance, disability income insurance, or long-term care insurance. It's really just, hey, taking a look at your benefits. Are they still in line with the goals and why I originally put them in place? And if they're not, then you can always, generally you can make changes to those policies or whatever, those contracts. But lastly, what I think is, some of the saddest things I've ever seen is like when you don't review beneficiaries and then a mistake is made. So reviewing beneficiaries, checking values and benefits of insurance, all kinds. And you could go as far as, we've kind of focused on life, disability, and long-term care, but you could go as far as, your umbrellas and your car and home and all that kind of stuff could be included in that as well.
Yeah, the rates have been going up significantly in a lot of those different insurances because of loss that they've seen in certain areas of the country. So it is a good time to probably review all of those coverages. Particularly, I think that home and auto coverage is a good one to look at, the umbrella coverage, and whether or not you have enough coverage. Umbrella-wise, because of inflation and inflated property values, do you have enough coverage on your home and your dwelling? Are you going to be able to replace your dwelling if you have a fire? And then also, are the umbrella limits now appropriate for if you had a liability situation in your home and somebody got hurt? Medical care is very expensive, and you may need a higher coverage than just, we used to say, minimum, you got $1 million, you're fine. I don't know if that's really the case anymore. We've been recommending for a lot of clients higher limit insurance. So I think there's a time to review that now as well.
Depending on the source you look at, property and casualty insurance rates is the highest category affected by inflation, and it's not even close.
Really?
Yeah, it's not. It's like, I don't know. I'm going to make up a number. I think it's in the 20% increase range, and everything else. The next closest one is like 10 or something. I mean, it's the highest category affected by inflation. So first of all, be prepared for an increase. So if you haven't seen your property casualty bill this year, don't be sticker shocked by that. And second of all, exactly, shop it, talk to your agent. Am I in the best spot that I can be in? Am I overcovered? Am I undercovered? And so reviewing these things can have a big impact on what you're paying out of pocket.
You could just cut coverage for your kids and tell them not to drive, and that would save a significant amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, walking. I mean, you just walk, right? I mean,
it'll be a lot fitter.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No car accidents if you never actually drive a car.
See, just full of good ideas. Full of good ideas.
One last thing I do want to point out there with my insurance background, that a lot of the long-term care policies that I've seen recently are getting those like massive increases in premiums. And oftentimes there's offerings about, hey, here's option A, you can choose to do this or reduce your premium, but this is what happens to your benefit. Or we'll cut you a check for all premiums paid and you can be done with it. So talk to your a professional about like, is there an option that makes sense for me if premiums are getting exorbitant and you can't handle them or something like that. So again, it's one of those things that starting to see more and more of in the long-term care space, just because of how badly mispriced a lot of them were when they were originally sold. So,
So they would love to buy you out of your policy.
yes, they absolutely would love to.
Yes, you should do exactly the opposite of what the insurance company is trying to make you do. So that's me very looking at it from a very sarcastic and close lens. But I many times we recommend like, hey, look, you've gotten a really good deal for a long time, and you are going to have to pay the higher premium if you can tolerate it. Let's go on to number 3.
Number 3 is to do an investment allocation review. So this is drilling down a little bit further with your advisor and actually like, what do I own, and how much cash and how much stocks and how much bonds do I actually own, and does that align with the goals and objectives that we set out when we built the allocation, or is it in line with the financial plan that we'll talk about next? So reviewing, and obviously we're typically working with people in long-term investing strategies. We're not buying stocks and and trade and all that, but it does make sense to do an allocation review each year and just make sure that you're in line.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think you only have to go back a couple of years to understand the impact of that. Before a handful of years ago, that period of time before that, a kind of a bond was a bond, right?
Mm-hmm.
While the last couple of years, people have understood quickly that you can lose a lot of money in bonds depending on which ones you own. So that was simply just an allocation of this bond versus this bond. It could have, I might have lost 10% versus 3%. Those are big changes.
Yeah.
If you're asleep at the switch, those can affect you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good time to plan that well. It's sunny outside as well. The markets are presently doing fairly well, and it's time to look on the horizon. And if we do have some storm clouds out there, let's prepare for that right now. Let's kind of get our allocation ready for the future.
Winter's coming.
Winter is coming. That's right. That's right. Maybe sooner than you think.
Is that an older one? Like
that's a Game of Thrones.
Nate's never seen
which I've never
the Game of
watched,
Thrones episode, but he does know the.
I do know I don't even know what it means. Winter's coming. Of course it is. It's part of the. It's part of the seasons. But
so the hat that I wore too, the hodl hat. That's a Game of Thrones thing too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
You'll have to read up on that one.
Yeah.
At a later date.
We're about 4 episodes into Breaking Bad, so we'll get to that. Okay. Number 2.
Number 2, review credit and debt. So what we mean here is, if you own a home or if you've recently bought a home and you have a mortgage or a home equity line of credit, talk to your bank about the current rates that because as of last week there were some rate cuts. If you have money in things like CDs or high yield cash accounts, something like that, check your rates with your bank and just make sure that you're taking advantage of some of the higher rates out there right now.
Yeah, dirty little secret is when you get those special rates with your bank and you get a 14-month rate. As soon as it kind of comes due, you'll get renewed usually to the closest one, and lo and behold, it's a little lower than their special rate. So you just have to be a little more active on that. Also, just manage and look at those checking and savings accounts. If they're looking a little big, hey, look at and make sure you're maximizing your, even by just transferring from checking to savings in many cases, you can give yourself a little extra APY using an online savings account. There's plenty of them out there. I mean, you don't have to get crazy where you're just transferring all the time, but just do a good job managing all of that. And I'll go back to the mortgage rates now. If you want to make yourself feel good, log into your mortgage provider and take a look at your rate if you got it a few years ago and know that you bought around the bottom. So make yourself feel real good and take a look at that rate, and also understand the arbitrage of that rate that you have in there. Like your rate there that you have, if it's at a low rate, that's extremely powerful for your whole financial situation. So kudos to you for keeping that rate and sticking in that house, because that's probably one of your best investments that you've made over the last 10 years.
Yeah, and 0.25% there can have a huge impact on your overall financial planning and financial well-being.
Nate, you're kind of our real estate guy. When do you look at refinancing then if you did?
I mean, again, it's a complex question. It's a loaded question. I would say probably a minimum of 0.5% drop. You'd want to start looking at it. Maybe you don't make a move until it drops 0.75% off your number. But the last quick point I'll make on that, because I know we're getting a little long in the tooth, but we just had a client this morning, 2.9 on an auto loan. So don't think that those rates are dead and gone forever when it comes to debt. They're still out there depending on kind of where you're at. So, all right, drum roll for number one.
Drum roll for number one. Number one is review your financial plan. We do financial plans for all of our clients here. I think that 6 through 2 will all be included with your review of your financial plan if you work with Walker & Condon. So, has my spending changed? Have my goals changed? Have any objectives changed? Have children moved out or moved back, or are up at school now? So all these different things that could change a potential your plan. Just take some time to go see your advisor and review what's going on.
I think that's a great way to kind of wrap up, because that, to your point, that's the culmination of all of these things prior to that and kind of leading up to that, is this idea that once you do a financial plan, and if you're the kind that just kind of had it done for you and then you put it in a drawer somewhere, it's way outdated at this point. So if it's not actively being updated and reviewed on a year-over-year basis, it's not really doing for you what it could do for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you on another episode of Give Me Some Truth.
Walker & Condon Financial Advisors is a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Registration with the SEC does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The opinions expressed by the participants of this podcast are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Walker & Condon Financial Advisors. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. Thanks for listening, and for further information, please visit walkercondon.com.